Hello everyone, this is part 15 of What If Naruto Was Neglected and Was Trained by Shisui, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The next day. Well, this is quite the sight. A dark and deep voice muttered as the man's green eyes wandered across the forest, training his vision on one spot in particular. His tan hand played with a few pebbles as he bent down to the ground and looked at the sacred battlefield around him. It was hard to deduce what exactly had happened here, but it was clear that a battle was had. Judging from the top of the cave that was entirely cut in half and had split the ground in two and showing a plethora amount of the calming endless blue sky. Scanning his eyes over the broken cave, he caught the sight of something even more interesting. He touched the odd black substance, letting the grainy material fall between his fingers as he rolled the remains in his palm. The substance was thicker than he thought it would be, as it was no doubt denser because of the heavy rainfall that Kusa had gone through the previous night. A tall man groaned loudly as he scratched the right side of his exposed body as he stared at his partner in front of him with an annoyed expression. "Come on, Kakazu Barker, we've been here for over 20 minutes. The now identified Kakazu scowled as he glared at his idiot of a partner, unconsciously squeezing the black material in his hand, making a bunch of water leak out of the fine grain. Hidan, shut up. Whatever has happened here, I'm certain it must involve the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. I'm sure. Huh. It just looks like someone just destroyed the cave. How does this have anything to do with old Nini?" Hidan said as he stuck his impressive triple-bladed scythe into the ground and leaned onto the hilt. He looked uninterested as he spoke, fingering his ear with his pinky finger, not even bothering to look over at his partner. Kakazu scoffed, debating whether or not he just cut the head off of the gray-haired bastard and bury the head away from his body. Idiot. Zetsu had told us that the Kyuubi Jinchuriki had received a mission and was coming to Kusa. Really? Maybe I should start paying attention during meetings, Hidan said, flicking whatever he got out of his ear over at Kakazu as he used the same finger to pick at his teeth. Kakazu fumed angrily as he threw a kunai, completely ripping off the man's index finger. Hidan didn't even react to the pain as he watched his finger fall to the ground with a small thud. Hidan glared at Kakazu. "Kakazu Barker, what the was that for? You batted, come over here and reattach it." "Shut up, Hidan. Now come on, Kakazu. The longer we wait, the longer it will take us to get back to real business." "My finger. Stop your whining and hurry up, idiot. Kakuzu. Is everything okay, Kurenai?" Kurenai felt herself blink in surprise as she felt Narumi walk up beside her, giving the Junin a half-puzzled, half-concerned look. They were standing just outside the hotel they had rented for the night, and Kurenai was watching as Kiss's puppet picked up the limp body of Naruto in its large arms. Kurenai, of course, had tried to persuade Kise to let her carry Naruto, but the young girl was adamant to doing it herself. Kurenai was saddened by this but ultimately backed off with her requests, assuming that Kise might not have trusted her or any of the Konoha shinobis regarding Naruto's safety. So she just kept her eyes trained on the girl with the occasional glances towards the blonde boy, her heart quickening as she looked at his unconscious body. Narumi frowned as Kurenai had seemingly ignored her question and just kept looking at Naruto's direction. Narumi knew how much the Junin cared for the boy, but this was a really big surprise. It stung a little in Narumi to see someone else care so much for her brother when she couldn't do the same. Looking at the body of Naruto again only ignited a bleak sense of familiarity, and that was it. Narumi repeated her question and was successful at breaking Kurenai out of her trance. "Yes, I'm all right." Narumi frowned, shaking her head as she crossed her arms under her chest, looking at Kurenai with an unbelieving stare. "Look, Kurenai, I don't want to meddle in things, but the way you acted after you found Naruto wasn't like you at all. You don't even look like you slept at all last night," Narumi pointed out, looking at the barely noticeable bags under the Junin's eyes. Kurenai matched her own frown with Narumi's as she finally looked at the redhead fully. Kurenai was not in the mood to talk about her jumbled up feelings, since even she wasn't certain about them herself. Her mind felt like a bomb erupted in her head and totally threw her thoughts for a loop. Just the mere sight of Naruto was enough to throw Kurenai through the ringer. She didn't know why, but it had. All she could think about was the way he looked at her before he put her under his genjutsu. The all too familiar dream as she drowned in his sadness, his true feelings. Like she felt all of it. Narumi watched concerned as a variety of emotions flashed through Kurenai's eyes, unsure of what to even say in this situation. Kurenai looked mentally exhausted and it was easy to tell just by looking into her eyes. Kurenai did a good job at hiding it however, but Narumi knew the genjutsu mistress well enough to read her subtle body language. I just missed him, Kurenai admitted. Narumi's eyes softened and she opened her mouth to reply, but at that exact moment Sai decided to make himself known. The back-haired Chunin exited the hotel running a hand through his hair. He looked fully refreshed and the moment he spotted his team he gave a wave walking over to them. Good morning, are we ready to head out? Kurenai nodded her head in approval as they made their way over to Keys, who was patiently waiting for them already a part of the way down the street. Keys, at seeing the group walk towards her she gave a somewhat awkward nod in greeting. Ignoring the looks of fear that the passerbys gave here as the Kazekage puppet loomed over her protectively, its long arms wrapped completely around Naruto shielding him from the blistering sun. Wordlessly, they all agreed and started their run out of the town and back towards Konoha. The Konoha were shocked to see that Keys was managing to keep up with them. They were moving at high Chunin speeds but it didn't even seem to faze the young girl. Keys herself was starting to pick up her own pace as the Kazekage floated next to her. Her mind seemed to be elsewhere and didn't even try to join in on the conversation the group was having. She was far too preoccupied in thinking about her new plan. It would be tricky to gather so much information without drawing out suspicions from the others. She even had to think of an alibi for herself on how she had met Naruto. Narumi had pulled her aside last night before they all had gone to sleep to inform her that the Hokage knew nothing about her or even why Naruto had truly left the village. Keys was shocked to hear this, and when she asked the girl why, her answer was even more surprising. Didn't want to ruin anything for him. It was shocking, but Keys thanked her anyway that night. Narumi looked completely self-aware about her treatment towards Naruto and actually looked like she wanted to make a change for the better. Keys wondered if Naruto would actually forgive his sister or not. It was hard to tell since he was still in his coma, but Keys liked the odds. Other than that, their trip back to Konoha was kept in relative silence between the four of them, with the occasional question thrown Kiss's way about how Naruto had been doing, or regarding what they did on their trip. Keys answered the majority of them, much to Kurenai's relief when she learned that Naruto was without a doubt happy with the way he was living. Keys made sure to leave out anything relating to Sasori or Atarashi. The puppet master had told them that they were still a pretty secret group, especially since they had lost so many members in such a short time. Keys didn't want to risk anything, so she locked the information away for later. So Naruto-kun actually trained you? More or less. Narumi basically took care of me for the past 2 years since I've known him. Keys replied with a smile, reminiscing slightly as her mind wandered back to when he first taught her how to channel her chakra in Takagakure. You seem very close to Blondie-kun, calling him Ni-chan. Sai said. Keys just nodded her head again, not noticing the slight ping of sadness that glinted in Narumi's eyes. Yes, we are. Narumi helped me when no one else did. I was on the verge of breaking completely until he came along and decided to fix me. I owe a lot to him. Her words were met with a difference of emotion. Narumi was the one most affected, but she was doing a good job at hiding it. She wasn't really surprised that Naruto managed to find someone else that he saw as family, but it didn't mean it didn't hurt a bit. Sai just nodded his head in acknowledgement, understanding what she meant since he had gone through something similar. Kurenai felt herself smile, however, glad to see that someone seemed to care so much for her favorite blonde. He deserved it more than anything, and it helped ease the remaining fear that he wasn't doing well all out on his own. I'm glad you could be. Guys, we're being followed. Narumi whispered, cutting Kurenai off as they all felt their bodies tense. Narumi's face turned serious as she tilted her head back, her eyes looking behind her into the fast-moving forest as she felt the chakra signatures grow closer with each passing second. I sense 2 chakra signatures, one is very large and the other is about a normal Junin in size. They're ganging up on us fast. Kurenai cursed her luck, they just couldn't catch a break. There was a slim chance that whoever was tailing them wasn't after them specifically. But she trusted Narumi's judgment that they were in fact coming dangerously close to the group. The gears started to spin in Kurenai's head as she thought about what they should do. Kurenai didn't want to put her team in unnecessary danger, and she for sure didn't want to harm Naruto and more than he already was. Narumi warned them that they were getting even closer as the group picked up their own speed. Kise looked nervous back at Narumi, her mind wondering if whoever was following them if they were after Naruto. The Kazekage tightened his hold on Naruto as she looked over to Kurenai. Kise didn't like taking orders from others that weren't Kise or Sasori, but she would let it slide this time. Naruto's safety was her top priority and she would throw away what little pride she had to ensure that he stayed unhurt. Kurenai channeled more chakra into her feet as she jumped in front of the group, her back facing the forest as she looked towards them all. Her face shined confidently as she glanced between the ragtag group of people, and singular puppet. Okay, I have a plan. Kurenai sighed as she let her arms dangle at her sides, looking up into the beautiful blue sky. Not a single cloud was visible and no one would have ever known that Kusa was drawing in rain just last night. The Genjutsu mistress stayed still as she stood alone in a large forest clearing just past the border of grass country. She didn't have much alone time with her thoughts as two loud bangs reached her ears. Kurenai ignored the small gust of wind that fluttered her battle dress as she looked forward. The dust had begun to settle, making two tall individuals become visible. Kurenai felt her face pale considerably as the swaying black and red cloaks caught her attention almost immediately. Kurenai had to school her emotions and hide her shock at seeing the Akatsuki cloaks for the first time in her career. She wasn't prepared to see the terrorist organization chase after them. The Hokage had informed all the Chunin and Junin about the Akatsuki and their motives. That they were hunting down Jinchuriki, hidden in the trees. Narumi and Kise both felt their blood run cold, both for entirely different reasons. Kurenai watched as the two men in front of her stood tall, both looking as intimidating as possible as her eyes glanced towards the sky again, this time focusing her vision on the retreating large black and white bird flying in the direction of Konoha at high speeds. Please, Sai, get yourself and Naruto-kun to safety. Kurenai, Yuhi, correct. You fetch quite a price in the black market. The man in the front said, taking a step forward and boring his emerald green eyes into Kurenai. Kurenai kept her face expressionless, but she had to fight back a shudder at the man's voice. It was deep and more menacing than she was anticipating. She looked over to his crossed-out Takagakure headband over his head as a mask covered the bottom half of his face, only showing his pupil-less eyes to Kurenai. Kakazu, the bounty hunter of the Akatsuki. Kakazu raised a non-existent eyebrow at the use of his name, and if he was shocked, he didn't show it. Oh, you seem to know who I am. Kurenai grinned, putting a hand on her hip, and unaware Akatsuki members were the tip of her fingers reaching into her shinobi pouch. Konoha knows more about your little organization than you would think. Don't act surprised. Ha ha ha, you should see your face, Kakazu Barker. Kakazu felt a tick mark appear on his forehead from Hidan's voice. Kakazu tore his eyes off of Kurenai, who just blinked in surprise at the man's sudden laughter and glared darkly at his partner. Kakazu's glare only made Hidan laugh ever harder. Hidan, shut the up. Just as the words left the bounty hunter's mouth, they were forced to separate as a wall of iron sand cut in between them, trying to catch the group off guard. Kurenai grinned again as she watched the attack work in separating the two. Using a quick fire jutsu, she sent a fireball hurtling its way towards Kakazu. The missing NN didn't have a problem jumping out of the way as he glared at Kurenai. Rasengan. Kakazu looked up to see just the person he was looking for coming barreling at him at incredible speed. The spinning ball of Shaka hit him dead center in the chest, forcing a scream from his throat as he flew backwards from the jutsu and impacting into a large tree in the distance. Kise jumped out of the forest, keeping the wall of iron sand up as she kept her puppet hidden in the tree branches as she looked off the now annoyed-looking Hidan. The gray-haired man scowled as he rested his large scythe on his shoulder, looking at the young girl with disinterest. Hara, you're just a ring kid. Kise ignored the jab as she felt Narumi jump down beside her. Her attack on Kakazu seemed to distract him enough for Narumi to regroup with Kise. The redhead had her palm on the ground as she landed without even making a sound. Narumi smirked over at Kise as the girl raised an eyebrow at her. What are you doing? The plan was to have you stay with Kurenai. Narumi's smirk evolved into a full-blown grin as she shook her head, spinning a kunai out of her pouch as she stood tall next to the young girl. Making sure to look at Hidan as she spoke. I gave Kurenai a little gift to increase her chances. She should be perfectly fine. Hey, stopping ignoring me. Hidan yelled in anger over the two girls, his face contorting into a wicked grin as he laughed maniacally. You both will be great sacrifices to Jashin-sama. He screamed before taking off towards the girls, his hand reaching up, gripping his scythe by the handle and swinging downwards. Both girls had to just to separate as the three-bladed scythe stuck itself into the ground. It ripped pieces of soil out as it embedded itself within the earth. He was about to take his scythe out and tug towards Narumi, until he found that this tool was stuck. Hidan looked confused as he pulled harder but it wouldn't budge. Hidan was about to scream in rage as he ducked a kick that was sent towards his face from Narumi. Scowling, he headbutted his attacker, making Narumi shunshin above him, the familiar ball of chakra forming in her palms. Hidan gave up on grabbing his scythe as he jumped away just as the Rasengan smashed into the ground, narrowly dodging the attack. Just as his feet touched, he felt something hard rub against his legs. Looking down, he saw that black substance that he and Kakazu found earlier start to wrap around his leg, immobilizing him as Narumi appeared behind him, grabbing his arms and bending them to the watched with great annoyance as he watched the small golden-eye girl grab his scythe from the ground and stuck the front blade to his neck. Looking the girl up and down, he took notice of the black grain substance coming from the small gourd on her hip. Moving his eyes back to his scythe, he scowled. You dare disrespect such a weapon given to me by Jashin-sama himself. Like I care who this Jashin person is, Keith said, pushing the blade deeper into Hidan's throat, drawing a fine line of blood to leak down his pale skin and onto the grass. Now, why don't you tell us why you were following us and I'll think about letting you live. Hidan laughed again, making Narumi tighten her grip on his hands. It didn't stop his laughter as he grinned darkly at Keys, not even aware of the pain in his neck as he licked his lips, drawing a quick look of unease from the 10-year-old. You brag about knowing of the Akatsuki, yet you don't know why. He said smugly, tilting his head down to stare at Narumi, making the blade cut deeper into his neck as he mischievous glint passed through his face, along with a loud crack. We're here for you, little ninny, he said, another loud crack echoing in his mouth as a small chakra spike resonated within him and he spit the tooth he had just snapped off straight towards Narumi's head. The redhead was unprepared for the strange attack as the tooth fragment struck her right between the eyes with enough force to send her tumbling backwards. Feeling his arms become free from Narumi's previous vice grip, he grinned, bending a part of his body back and slapping his scythe clean from Kiss's grasp as he brought his other hand out and slapped Keys across the face. The iron sand around Hidan's ankles started to give away as he leaped out of the sand, grabbing his scythe from the air and came down on Keys with a loud shriek. Keys rolled out of the way, avoiding being cut as one of the blades sliced through her pant leg. Hidan's laughs were now bordering on insane as he kept his onslaught going. Each time he brought his scythe, a Shrek was brought along with it, slamming the bladed weapon in the ground with such force that Keys had to keep crawling back to avoid the attacks. Die. Keys rolled to the side, dodging the bladed weapon. This time she had more time to channel her chakra, stopping the scythe into the ground again as she pushed off the ground, punching Hidan square across the face. The gray-haired man felt his head whip to the side, but just as Kiss's fist impacted with his head, she turned her hand around and opened her palm, grasping at Hidan's open mouth and swinging him to the ground. A sickening crack echoed in the clearing as Keys held onto Hidan's now broken jaw. With a roar, Hidan kicked Keys away, holding his jaw in his hands as he felt the bone crack beneath him. Snapping his jaw back into place, he ran forward, grabbing his scythe again. Keys jump. Keys landed on her feet from the unexpected kick and headed Narumi's direction. Feeling the wind start to pick up around her feet as Hidan closed in on her. Narumi, after recovering from the attack earlier, ran through hand seals, slamming her hands on the floor as she waited for her moment. Wind style, Giza. Narumi yelled as Keys felt the wind pick up even stronger around her as she jumped in the air. The second she did, Keys masked her surprise as a large wind picked up, sending her soaring up into the sky directly out of harm's way from Hidan's attack. Sorry about that, but now it's my turn. Hidan snapped his head around just in time to see Narumi in his face with a smirk with two identical clones besides her. Hidan brought his forearm up, blocking the kick sent his way. Twisting his arm, he grabbed the girl's ankle and brought her towards him. With a sinister grin, he brought his scythe forward, slashing it across Narumi's chest as he yanked it back. Seeing the body of Narumi puff into a ball of smoke, He scowled as the smoke obscured his vision and didn't have enough time to see the kwani that lodged itself into his thigh. With a grunt he swung his scythe forward through the smoke, disappearing it as he felt something grab onto his arm. Looking back he saw the body of Narumi pressed up against him. Clone explosion. Hidan widened his eyes as the clone on his arm spoke. A loud explosion roared through the clearing as Hidan was sent flying back as his body tumbled back as he was sent directly through a tree with a loud smack. Narumi smirked as her plan worked better than she had anticipated. Hidan didn't seem like he knew very much ninjutsu or anything, he mainly relied on his scythe to do most of the damage and he didn't seem to care about being hurt. Narumi's smirk soon fell however as she watched Hidan walk out of the forest, and he did not look happy. His purple eyes were practically glowing with rage as he limped back to her. His Akatsuki cloak was entirely destroyed now, leaving a heavily scarred upper body visible to the world. With a loud cry of anger he reached upwards and tore out the large wooden branch that somehow found its way stuck in his chest. He threw the piece of wood to the side as a large amount of blood leaked from his wound and not the grass below him. Narumi wasn't sure how he could still smile after all of that, or how he was even alive as the clone exploded right next to him. "You stupid. You have really pissed me off," he said as he raised his hands outwards. His look of rage vanishing as an ominous aura formed around him. His eyes turned eerily black as he bared his teeth to the Namikas. "You will be a perfect sacrifice for Jashin-sama. Shut up already," Keys yelled as she came barreling down to him from above. Hidan was so shocked, he had forgotten all about the girl as she spun in the air, a tendril of iron sand sticking out of her sleeve as she attempted to slice him to bits. Hidan was able to jump away just enough to have the attack slice across his back as he screamed in surprise. With a crazed glint in his eyes he turned towards Keys. The young girl was surprised to see Hidan react so quickly. She would have thought the attack would have done enough damage to stop him for a bit, not at the least paralyze him. She tried to shun away but was too late as he dug his hell into her gut. Keys screamed from the pain as he twisted his foot, scowling madly. "I hate you too. This is so stupid. Please Jashin-sama give me the strength to end this he muttered loudly as he stomped down on Keys angrily. "No you don't." Hidan glowered as he felt Narumi once again appear behind him, ducking her kick as he elbowed her right under the kneecap making her body buckle downwards. With another proud shriek he turned his body 90 degrees, sliding Keys with him as he dragged her across the floor ignoring her screams of agony as he flicked his heel back. Digging it deeper into her chest as he proceeded to kick her away from him and sent her flying back with a gasp of pain. While he was doing that he gripped onto Narumi's arm and brought her forward and headbutted her. Narumi was left dazed from the attack, not prepared for his head to feel like solid steel as she tumbled backwards a bit. Regaining her composure, she sent a right hook back at him to his face. Hidan didn't even bother to dodge as he flexed his muscles, not even wincing from the attack as he pulled the strap of his scythe towards himself in an attempt to cut Narumi in half. The redhead narrowly dodged the fatal attack as she gripped onto her arm, noticing the large slice that was leaking blood down her left arm. Narumi winced in pain as she pulled her arm away, glancing over to Keys who looked like she was barely holding onto her own consciousness. Narumi scowled as Hidan's maniacal laugh soared through the forest. Narumi clicked her tongue in her mouth. The pain was already starting to leave her body as the QB started to heal her new wound. Ignoring the man's laughter she scowled, just how the hell was this man still alive? He had lost more blood than he should have and several holes joined the ever-growing collection of scars on his body. Hidan's laughter seemed to grow even more crazy as Narumi just about had enough. Flipping a kunai out of her pouch she threw at him. She felt her eyes almost bulge out of her head as he let the kunai dig itself into his chest, his body twitching back from the impact as he gave Nami a loud grin. He dropped his scythe to the ground as he drew around himself, his body almost trembling as he did so. Narumi was about to rush towards him, but the second she took a step forward her body felt completely frozen. Snapping her head back to Hidan she felt her eyes widen again as she watched the grey-haired man, her body unable to move as she flexed her muscles. "What did you do to me?" Hidan snickered loudly as he raised his arms out again, looking up to the sky with a happy expression. Narumi watched as the circle he drew on the ground started to faintly grow underneath him. In his own blood he drew an upside-down triangle directly in the center as he brought his scythe to his face. Narumi felt queasy as she looked at Hidan. He glided his tongue over the blade, slowly enjoying the metallic taste. He savored the sensation in his mouth before swallowing loudly. His body then started to turn black. The darkness started to consume his skin as strange white markings found themselves embedded all over him, making him look like a skeleton. Everything is now complete. Thank you, Jashin-sama, for giving me the power for this. I will make this kill worth every drop of blood for you. Narumi scowled as Hidan's bloodshot eyes glazed over. She tried everything in her power to get her body to move, but it was impossible. Her body wasn't listening to her commands as she glanced in Kiss's direction, noticing the girl's eyes began to flutter open. Kiss, get him now. Squelch. Narumi felt her throat close up as she gasped loudly. Feeling her mouth fill up, she coughed up a large amount of blood as she hesitantly lowered her head, her face paling as she saw an incredible amount of blood starting to soak her shirt from a non-existent wound now in her chest. She coughed again, feeling her legs begin to shake but refusing to fall to the ground. Hearing Hidan laugh again, she tried to look up at him. Her chest felt like it was on fire as she could feel the QB already healing whatever phantom wound he could. Hidan just grinned as he dug the kwani deep in his chest, moaning slightly at the sensation as the bladed weapon entered his skin, making Narumi gasp in pain as more blood spilled from her body. Isn't it wonderful? The sensation of suffering tingles more when others feel it too. Please join me in this journey to pure ecstasy. He shrieked, grabbing the kunai by the hilt and smashing it down, causing a large vertical gash to tear his body up. Narumi's scream was deafening as the gash appeared on her skin like a mirror to Hidan's body. Her eyes turned glossy as she tried to reach to her wound, blue pupils stinging with unshed tears as she was forced to brave through the torture. The QB was doing his best to stop Narumi from bleeding out and heal her wounds as best she could. It was proving difficult, however, as each time he did, a new injury would appear on her body, forcing him to speed his process up. Feeling another pang of pain shoot through her, Narumi snapped her head to the sky. This time feeling control of her right arm as she gripped her shoulder tightly, blood soaking her fingers as her legs finally gave out and she fell on her knees panting in pain. Kiss's eyes shot open as Narumi's scream finally jolted her back into consciousness. Her head snapped her head to Narumi and her face paled considerably as she looked at the blood-soaked red head. Kiss jumped to her feet, summoning as much iron sand as she could from her hip and sent it spiraling towards Hidan. Hidan, finally noticing the forgotten girl, smiled wide, beaming as he watched the sand get closer to him, raising his hand up to grip the necklace around his neck. Yes, go ahead and bury me. Let us suffer together. Kiss, no, don't. Unfortunately, Kiss wasn't able to make out what Narumi had said and she was too late. The iron sand formed a long spear that struck Hidan through the chest, right through his belly button and went right through him. Kiss watched in horror as Narumi just shrieked even louder than last time as she fell on her side, her arms wrapping around her midriff as blood leaked from the front and back of her. Her hands gripped the grass beneath her as a whimper spread from her lips. Kiss's face paled even more as she sprinted towards Narumi. She winced from the pain in her own stomach from getting thrown around by Hidan as she shifted to Narumi's side, holding in her gasps at the sheer amount of blood that surrounded Namikaze's body. Anpp pain he feels SDD do I, Narumi whispered, but it was just loud enough for Kiss to hear. Narumi felt her body wince as she reached out and gripped tightly on Kiss's sleeve. The 10-year-old watched mortified as Narumi's nails dug into her own skin desperately. Ifyuss stop this. I seek and KK kill high him. Kiss hesitantly nodded as she placed her own hand over Narumi's bloodied one and rested it back onto the floor. Getting to her feet, Kiss took notice that her own iron sand attack had seemed to take an effect on Hidan himself. He looked to be in a good amount of his own pain and stuck in a small stupor. His eyes seemed glazed over as his hand rested on the spear through his stomach. He gave another contoured smile as Kiss glared at him. Salvation is almost here. She will be free from life and death and belong to our savior. Praise Jashin-sama. Kiss's glare deepened and she gave a quick apology to Narumi, warning her that she might have to endure a little more pain until it was over. Narumi could barely even nod her head, but she tried, glad that Hidan seemed to be in enough of a daze to ignore the torture he was giving her. Kiss rushed towards Hidan, making the older man grin again as he threw his scythe towards Kiss. Kiss sidestepped out of the way, letting the weapon soar past her unharmed. Hidan cackled loudly as he pulled the strap on the scythe, twisting it and making it come right back to him as it flew to Keys again. A quick spark of shock ignited within him as the weapon stopped mere inches away from Keys, like an unknown force grabbed a hold of his blade forcing it to stop. Hidan just grunted, dropping his grip on his weapon as he reached out and grabbed Kiss's leg that made a feeble attempt to kick him. Using much more force than she realized he still had, he threw her behind him. Keys jumped in the air to regain her balance as she slid across the grass before her back came into contact with a large tree. That explains it, he has to stay in the symbol. Keys thought as her plan went perfectly, Hidan had never moved out from the center of the symbol he was standing on. Most likely because whatever jutsu he was using required him to do so. With a grin of her own, she quickly pieced together a plan she had been letting marinate in her head. Sending a mental apology towards Narumi again for this, she snapped her fingers. Hidan looked on shocked for a moment as a large puppet flew from above the trees and straight towards him. The puppet's arms shot forward as a long blade swung upwards from his arm and aimed itself straight towards Hidan's heart. For a quick second Hidan felt his whole body burn with happiness at the thought of this, finding the whole situation rather poetic as the young girl was about to kill her very own teammate. Hidan felt his cheeks burn as the familiar sense of arousal flooded his body at the mere thought of it all. All in the name of Jashin. Gotcha. Hidan snapped his head away from the puppet closing in on him as he looked at Keys from his left. The 10-year-old skidded across the floor and shot her arm forward as light blue chakra strings formed from her fingertips and flew directly to Hidan's legs. He felt the dense chakra wrap around his legs and plant itself into his own leg. Narumi also winced from the pain while Keys, with a loud roar, pulled back hard on the strings making Hidan yelp as he felt himself get pulled from the unexpected force and step out from the symbol on the floor. The second he felt his feet leave the symbol, his body receded back to its original state. The black and white markings vanished on his skin as he gasped in shock as the puppet's blade pierced his skin going right through his heart as he skidded backwards towards Narumi. Much to her surprise, Hidan was still very much alive. He roared in anger as he cursed the girl for ruining his sacrifice. Keys just snapped her fingers again and the Kazekage puppet cleanly ripped the blade out of his body and threw him into the air. Keys gave chase as she sprinted past him, making sure to grab the side that he had dropped earlier. Narumi now. With pleasure, Narumi said as she got back to her feet, her wounds almost fully healed now that the QB didn't have to deal with anything else. A loud bang was heard as the floor beneath Narumi crumbled away, leaving a small crater in its way. Malicious red chakra flowed through her chakra coils as it exploded off her body. Narumi's features heightened as she felt her canine grow sharper, her eyes burned with animosity as she held her hand out. Within seconds the familiar jutsu started to form into her palm, this time though instead of blue, it was a deep maroon in color as 4 identical chakra tails swung behind her threateningly. With a growl Narumi channeled even more of her own chakra into the attack, and with a loud sizzling sound. Like the air itself was being sliced up into pieces, a large windmill of pure wind started to form around the jutsu. The wind started to pick up around her as the jutsu grew in size until it was just about the size of her palm. Vermilion Raisin Shuriken. She yelled, and with a final scream, she threw the jutsu with remarkable speed that there was no way for Hidan to dodge. The red Raisin Shuriken destroyed the ground underneath it as it soared towards the Akatsuki member. Keys didn't have time to sit and marvel at the jutsu as she gripped the scythe by the handle and propelled it forward with so much force she felt her index finger break under the pressure. Watching the jutsu get closer to him, Hidan felt his eyes go wide as the Raisin Shuriken got closer to him. Even from such a distance he could feel the absurd amount of heat radiating off the jutsu as it impacted with his stomach. Hidan felt his eyes almost bulge out of his head as for the first time in a very long time, he felt true pain. With an agonizing scream he felt the jutsu tear into his body. It had felt like the cells were being disintegrated from just being near it as the windmill stuck itself all over his body. His screaming never came to a stop as his skin twisted under the attack, eating away at his tissue as it ripped the skin clean off of him. He felt his legs go numb from the nerve damage as the force propelled him backwards with so pressure much he felt a rib break itself off as it punctured one of his lungs. Soaring back, he wasn't even aware of what was waiting for him, barely being able to keep his eyes open anymore. He was met with his scythe that Keys had thrown had submerged itself into a tree as he hit it head on. With a loud tear and a scream, Hidan felt his head get ripped off of his body as he came into contact with the scythe. The three blades that were waiting for him picked his head as his body fell limp on the ground, blood pooling out of his new wounds and staining the grass forever. Narumi sighed in relief as she let the warm chakra recede itself back into her and continue healing the smaller wounds on her body. Her body was still in a great amount of pain, and if she was an ordinary person, there was no way she could have ever survived that. She internally thanked the QB, but he didn't say anything back. Narumi watched as C fell down to the ground with a groan, holding her chest in pain as she did so. I think we did it. Narumi nodded as she walked over to Keys, hovering over the young girl as they both looked far worse for wear. Looking back at the deceased body of Hidan with a sense of pride. Together that had actually killed an Akatsuki member, an S-class rated shinobi who was feared throughout the land. Keys tilted her head upwards to look at Narumi, growing as she looked at how bloody the girl was. Sorry, if I was awake sooner then I could have done more. Narumi blinked in surprise at Keys, shaking her head as she offered her hand to the young girl with a small smile. Don't say that. It had bought enough time for you to catch him off guard. That was a good plan, by the way, Narumi said with a grin. Keys looked at the offered hand for a moment. She felt the corner of her lips curve into a smile of her own as she took the hand and got to her feet next to Narumi. Thank you, still so. God Ewing S. How dare you ruin my ritual to Jashin Sama. Narumi and Keys both felt their bodies freeze as they snapped their heads over to Hidan. Absolute shock filled their bodies to the very core as they watched the severed head of Hidan move from side to side on his own side. What the? Narumi said as she walked over to the head skeptically. Keys was hot in her pursuit, trailing directly behind Narumi as she pulled the scythe out of the tree as the head fell to the ground. Both jumped in surprise as the head of Hidan spoke again, baring his white teeth as he glared evilly. He thrashed around as he attempted to bite Narumi's ankles. Kakuzu. Come and put my head back on my body. Kakuzu. Kakazu Barker. Narumi stepped back, not wanting to let the head bite her as she just looked on in shock. Keys seemed to be just as shocked as they watched the head scream obscurites out of its mouth. Narumi reached out again, ignoring the scream coming from Hidan as she gripped his messy head of grey hair and dangled him in front of her and Keys. He screamed again, both from anger and slightly embarrassed at being handled so carelessly. Okay, how are you doing this? Is this a genjutsu? Narumi said, making Keys nod her head along with him. Keys raised her arms into the ram seal as she tried to dispel the genjutsu. After a few seconds of trying, nothing happened. Keys just looked to Narumi and shook her head negatively. No, you stupid S. I was granted this power from Jashin Sama himself. Now Kakuzu, get over here and put me back together, damn it. Keys just snapped her fingers at her sides as the sand in her gourd escaped and wrapped itself around Hidan's mouth, gagging him into complete silence. Narumi nodded her head in approval as she held her grip on the man's hair. Turning back to Keys, she thrusted the head to her, making the 10-year-old shift backwards. Okay, I don't know what's going on. But can your puppet at least hold him? This is starting to really freak me out. Kiss's eyes went wide in shock as she shook her head. What? No way. Why are we even taking him? Keys retorted back. Hidan seemed to agree as he thrashed even more as she tried to speak through the iron gag and looked at Narumi with a glare. The Jinchuriki just pushed the head closer, not wanting to even hold it any longer. If he really can't die, then it doesn't hurt taking the head back to Konoha with us. If we can even get him to talk about the Akatsuki, then it'll be a win-win. Keys frowned. Damn, that did make sense. With a lot of disgust, she mentally commanded her puppet towards. The puppet did as it was told and wrapped its long slender arms around the head and cradled it close to his chest. Hidan looked like he was foaming at the mouth as he tried to speak past the gag. Keys shuddered and with a twitch of her pinky, moved more sand upwards and completely wrapped his head in the sand altogether. Narumi was more than comfortable with that as she put her head in her hands. This had been one of the most bizarre days of her life. Narumi and Keys were both mentally and physically drained, which would explain why they weren't too shocked to see a talking severed head after everything they just went through. Now she was itching to get back to Konoha and straight to that bathhouse. We should probably go and check up on Kurenai. Hopefully she's okay. Narumi said as she turned to the young girl. Her brow raised in confusion as she watched Keys stalk her way to the side in the tree. With much more bravado than Keys had in she gripped the handle in her hands and pulled the blade out of the tree. She winced slightly as she clutched her hand in pain. She had forgotten that one of her fingers had been broken. Ignoring the pain as she wrapped the scythe over her back, but the scythe was a little longer than her, so with a frown, she handed it to her puppet as he wrapped it around him. Keys noticed the look of confusion Narumi was giving her and shrugged. What? I want it. Let's just go see Kurenai. I'm too tired for any of this. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.